J'ouvre maintenant la séance.
I now call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 23 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. Pursuant to the motion adopted on September 18, 2025, the committee is meeting as part of its study on barriers to entrepreneurship among veterans. Today's meeting is being held in a hybrid format in accordance with the rules of procedure. Members may participate in person or via the Zoom application.
I would ask that all in-person participants to consult the guidelines written on the cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio and feedback incidents and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters. You will also notice a QR code on the card which links to a short awareness video. I would like to make a few comments for the benefits of the witnesses and our members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. And for those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can use the appropriate channel for the interpretation, either floor, English, or French. And for those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Pour les députés présents dans la salle, si vous...
For members present in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please, I don't think we have anyone on Zoom, so I'm just going to skip that part.
I'd like to welcome our witnesses for our first hour. En tant qu'individu,
as an individual, Dr. Brian Brulotte.
Of Honor House Society by video conference, Mr. Richard Coleman, Director. And from the Veterans Elite Drone Training Services, Inc., Mr. Greg Merrill, remotely piloted aircraft system instructor and flight reviewer by video conference. I want to say thank you for joining us today. You will each have 5 minutes to give your opening remarks, and we will then proceed to a series of questions with the members of the committee. Je vais inviter Dr. Brulotte.
I'm now going to invite Dr. Brulotte to go ahead and start for 5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
To appear before you today. It's a privilege to be invited as a witness on an issue that matters deeply to me both professionally and personally. How Canada can better support veterans who wish to become entrepreneurs. Mon discours va être en anglais.
My speech will be in English, but for those who have questions later on, I'd be happy to answer in either of the two official languages.
Infantry officer of the Canadian Army, having served both in the regular Army and the primary reserve over 42 years. My military service shaped my leadership style, my tolerance for risk, and my understanding of responsibility and mission focus. Like many veterans, I transitioned from a highly structured institution into civilian life where those attributes were valuable, but not always translated or recognized. Academically, I'm a graduate of the Collège Militaire Royal de Saint-Jean. I pursued postgraduate studies that emphasized leadership, organizational management, and execution under pressure. That included an MBA and a doctorate in business. Professionally, after leaving full-time military service and concurrent to my service in the Army Reserves, I went on to build and lead one of Canada's largest staffing and workforce solution firms. At its peak, my company, Maxis, employed approximately 3,000 employees and generated close to $100 million in annualized revenue across 14 offices from Vancouver to Halifax. As the sole owner, Maxis operated nationally across Canada and served with public and private sectors clients in highly regulated environments. I share this not as a personal resume exercise, but it's to establish that over 30 years in business, I've lived the full arc of what many veterans aspire to do: transition, entrepreneurship, growth, and scale. I've seen where the system works and, more importantly, where it does not. Based on that experience, I'd like to offer 4 concrete recommendations to the committee. First, structured transition-oriented business training. Veterans possess many of the raw attributes required for entrepreneurship: discipline, resilience, decision-making under uncertainty, and leadership. What they often lack is targeted business literacy at the moment of transition. Not generic entrepreneurship seminars, but practical, applied training focused on fundamentals, such as cash flow management, corporate structuring, regulatory compliance, procurement, and risk management. This training should be offered ideally before release and should recognize prior military leadership experience rather than treating veterans as novice professionals starting from zero. My second recommendation, formalize networking and peer-based support ecosystems. Entrepreneurship is not an individual sport. Access to trusted networks is often the single greatest predictor of success. Veterans benefit enormously from peer communities that understand both military culture and cultural and commercial reality. Governments can play a catalytic role here by supporting veteran-led business networks, mentorship programs, peer advisory groups, and connect new entrepreneurs with experienced operators, investors, and professional service providers. The goal is not dependency, it's accelerated learning and reduced isolation. Third recommendation, procurement access and early customer validation. One of the hardest challenges for any new business is securing its first credible customer. Veterans are often well suited to government contracting environments, yet find procurement systems opaque and inaccessible. Targeted procurement pathways, pilot programs, or set-asides that allowed veteran-owned businesses to compete fairly and transparently can provide validation without compromising value for money or competition principles. Fourth, and my last recommendation, and most critically, it's access to growth and scale capital. This final point is not unique to veterans, but it's essential that the committee hears it. Canada has a systemic problem when it comes to scaling successful mid-sized companies internationally, because that was my ambition, was to scale Maxis internationally. In my own case, despite having thousands of employees, strong revenues, a proven operating model, I found it extraordinarily difficult to secure financing to expand overseas. Domestic banks were conservative, export-oriented capital was limited, growth capital for companies beyond startup but below the multinational scale was simply not available in a meaningful way. And this is why I sold Maxis in August of 2024 for $20 million. For veteran entrepreneurs who succeed domestically, this becomes a ceiling. We encourage ambition, but we do not provide the financial infrastructure to support it. If Canada is serious about building globally competitive companies, including those founded by veterans, then access to scale capital must address as a policy issue. Thank you for your time, and I welcome your questions.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Brulotte.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brulotte, and thank you for your service.
Now invite from the Veterans Elite Drone Training Services, Inc., Mr. Greg Merrill, remotely piloted aircraft system instructor and the flight reviewer, to speak for 5 minutes. Merci.
Merci, Madame Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Retired Air Force officer, aerospace engineer, 27 years in the regular force, some time after that in the sub-reserves, but following my time in the regular force, I did transition on to industry where I worked in the nuclear industry for several years, and then later on forming businesses of my own. But my reason being here today is regarding the ever-expanding world of drones, the industry itself, its applicability to veterans, and the training opportunities that VETS offers. VETS was formed about 3 years ago to offer training to vets that could be accessed, or at least would have funding access through the funding programs, both the short course and the formal program funding, excuse me. In March 2023, VETS made a policy change, unexplained, but they did make a policy change on allowing only short course funding to apply to drones, to drone training. Drones are also known as RPAS, which is a remotely piloted airborne system. We'll continue to use the name drone just for simplicity here. At that time, that began to limit the availability of the, should we say, the expansion of qualifications for veterans undertaking drone training, because the certifications required through Transport Canada require, in some cases, formal training, and that can burn up the $5,000 pot available through short course funding in a very, very short period of time. Some of the industries that drones are used in now, and we see them in cinematography, people see drone shows at various public events, What they don't see are areas such as what they call photogrammetry, where 2D images are taken from the air to form 3D images. These are used in geophysical surveys, water resource management, agricultural, accident site reconstruction, thermal imaging used by law enforcement, and also search and rescue to detect in this case, the temperature differential of a body, a warm body or a live body, pardon the term, out could be lost where the forces that be are trying to locate them, and can be done remotely from several miles away by a single operator. Pardon me. Why the one comment? Sorry, my throat's a little congested today too. Veterans are ideally suited for this vocation, similar to some of the reasons our previous witness had mentioned. They're focused. They have a nature of ingrained self-discipline. They spend a career where training is prevalent throughout. And as an instructor, I've even had experience with students diagnosed with PTSD that have found the focus and skill set development drone operations to be very, very therapeutic. VETS is a bona fide Transport Canada approved RPAS training facility, having trained over 350 veterans to date, employs over 50 instructors, including myself, across Canada. About a good portion of those individuals have gone on to form their own businesses. However, the training in the advanced areas I was mentioning previously put a ceiling on their ability to undergo that and to be employable. So, at that time, I guess the final summation comment I can make is these are not toys. They're highly complex devices that require extensive training to be utilized. The potential is growing all the time. The surface is only being scratched. And our objective is to have the approved eligibility list for the education training benefit under formal training program funding for drone-related training. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Merrill, and thank you for your service, sir. We will now pass the floor to Mr. Coleman, and I understand, Mr. Coleman, that we had some technical difficulty with your sound, so maybe before you start, could you just tell us a little bit about the weather, so we'll make sure that everybody is okay here behind me.
Absolutely. The weather in the Vancouver area right now is about 14, 15 degrees above. Sun this morning, a bit cloudy this afternoon, and quite pleasant.
I will not ask you to repeat the weather because I got some very negative outbursts of comments in this room. So, and apparently I'm being blamed. So I don't want to take that responsibility. But if you could just say a couple of extra words, that would be, it is still, I'm seeing and I'll do what they just told me. It's a little bit of a problem. So maybe let's try again, speak a little louder, or I'm not sure what's the issue behind me, so I want to make sure. But if you could say a few extra words, sir, so we can hear you better.
Absolutely. I am presently in a building called Honor House in New Westminster, British Columbia, that has given 19,000 free bed nights to veterans and service people and first responders if they come to Vancouver to get treatment for PTSD or any medical appointment or anything their family needs. It is a very beautiful home, and it is a place of safety and security for those folks to come to Vancouver.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Coleman, I'll invite you to start. We may have to interrupt you if we are not properly having translation during your speech. So I have to apologize in advance, sir, if that happens, okay? And I will regretfully interrupt your speech with us this afternoon. So if you could just start, and we'll take your time, sir.
Absolutely. My name is Rich Coleman. I am a businessman. I was in the Naval Reserves in my youth, the RCMP after that, and started a number of successful businesses. Went into public life in 1996 for 24 and a half years. I'm the former Deputy Premier of the province of British Columbia. And one of my passions is actually helping young people get into business or going in to help them for free how to turn their businesses around. The traits for a business leader are very important, and ironically, they align very much with the training of the Canadian Armed Forces. Many business owners fail to succeed because they haven't got the discipline or the organization. What we find with members of the armed forces, and I have worked with armed forces members to start businesses for them, is they come with something you don't even find in a regular employment environment. They come from their training as members of the armed forces, where they come with teamwork, personal responsibility. They can show up on time, operation management and commitment. They understand inventory control from the very first day simply because they are responsible for their personal kit, and they have mental health and a fitness. With these basics, members of the forces need to transition to additional skills as they come out of the forces in order to be successful in business. And this is where the armed forces could step up by giving them the understanding of financial reporting, revenue, expense portions, and running of a business. And there's no training or education that I'm aware of that helps those young men and women coming out of the forces to be able to do that, and that would be one of my recommendations. The second thing is that they need to know knowledge of the opportunities that are in front of them. And it is not just for our members of the armed forces, but young people looking to go into business tend to think there's only sort of traditional businesses out there for them to get into and be successful at. To my experience, having worked with armed forces members who have gone into business, they are adaptable and they can learn different opportunities within the business environment. So to achieve and seek out a successful business in Canada, you need to create an environment for success for these people as they come out of the armed forces. Business is no easy road. There are a number of stressors that come with owning and operating a business, and starting on your own is a daunting task. Members need a number of things. First of all, they need to sit down with somebody to build a business plan and articulate the market, that their objectives for building revenue, and in turn, how to deliver on those objectives to somebody that might want to invest in their business. One of the previous speakers brought up the issue with capital, which is obviously a requirement and also a hindrance for people to get into business today. What I have found is the best way to do with people with discipline and organization and a businessman is sit them down with private investors who will look at and be prepared to take a risk on an opportunity with somebody new. And as part of their mandate, they see as business owners to go out and help these people. The mentorship is very critical in starting a business. I've mentored a number of businesses over the years. The beauty of membership is they have people, if they have tied into a member, they have the opportunity to sit down, talk about their frustrations, talk about what's working and what's not working, and somebody with experience with mentorship. I think that you would find if you put a mentorship program in for the Canadian Armed Forces in cooperation with Canadian businesses, you would have a number of business people who would be happy to give them the time to be able to sit down and help them work through their business plan and be successful. An accessible ear of an expert is an invaluable asset to a new business owner. The Canadian Armed Forces should think about having a mentorship program, if they don't already have one, to coach those that are looking to enter business and to currently achieve that relationship. What I think you would find, because I know with my own colleagues in business over the years, they're really quite happy to sit down and help young business people if they're asked to do. And members of the armed forces, given how much people believe that people that serve our country should have a hand, I believe would step up. The other thing I think the armed forces should consider is actually having a relationship with major franchise opportunities in Canada. Actually have an agreement with them that they would look at their people to relative to whether it'd be good for a franchise owner, because franchises are more successful in business by percentage than just starting out on your own. And because it comes with discipline and management that's required, the people with the skills coming from the armed forces have those skills as well. The biggest thing I think for members of the armed forces, I have direct experience with a young man in business who served in Afghanistan. I think the biggest thing for him and for others that I've dealt with is this, is they need to have a sounding board. It's not just about the mentorship, but they really do need to be able to pick up the phone and talk to someone. And you'll be surprised how their stressors will come into play, and they just need to talk to somebody. And sometimes the stressor not exactly with the business, but they just need to talk through something which gets them to the issue for their business. And you'll find that they have that really affects their ability to handle the volatility of their operation. Because they've come from a business environment, when they get to focus back on the business, their success is much higher. For those described persons, I would take a call many times for listening ear, and I think you'll find that if you look at how you could help them in this way, as I described, you'll find that we can have a lot of successful young business people coming out of our armed forces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coleman. We appreciated your comments. And so now we will be starting a round of questions. Each member will have 6 minutes for the first round, and we'll start with Mr. Tolmie for 6 minutes.
Thank you to the witnesses for your testimonies and for your service and for your time to come here today and share with this committee your insights. We've been flipping back and forth between recently the PCVRS contract and then this entrepreneurial study. So sometimes we feel like we're losing a little bit of traction. And but something that was brought up yesterday or in the last meeting was about the U.S.'s vision or the way that they treat their veterans as social mobility. And so I want to kind of touch on that with the witnesses here. So here's what I'd like to start off with is the United States treats military service as a foundation for social mobility. The GI Bill, the Boots to Business program, and the 3% federal contracting set aside all reflects a deliberate policy choice that service should open economic doors, not close them, and veterans are seen as proven leaders, disciplined operators, and credible entrepreneurs worthy of investment. Mr. Brulé, when you stated your 4 recommendations, you touched on this. So I want to ask you initially, in Canada, we're studying barriers to veterans entrepreneurship while the $6.6 billion defense industrial strategy excludes the very people who served in the sector it's meant to build. What does that omission say about how Canada values military service as a pathway to economic opportunity?
I'm not sure I have a quick answer for that.
6 minutes.
You
have 4.
I don't know if I have a long answer either. I think there is value. There's definitely value, and I mentioned as recommendation number 3 is that if you can have opportunities for procurement access, very much as we have in terms of set-asides or technical point systems when you're looking at evaluating different bidders, you can use prior service as a technical criteria by which you can then you can increase or raise the value of a certain bid versus another one, as long as that's transparent and that's clear across the board. Because what that will do is not only allow veterans to bid on projects, but it will also provide an incentive for other companies that are perhaps have no veterans to bring veterans on board to then bid on the contract. So very much like the Aboriginal set-aside does, this would do the same.
Okay, thank you. That's a very well thought out answer. Mr. Merrill, very intrigued by your testimony, and I try and give you a short answer because I know that you're a little bit, you've got a dry throat here. So you're training veterans who then go on to found their own drone business services. They're opening up their own businesses. What is the single biggest non-skills barrier they face after completing training, and what would the federal government need to do to remove it?
The industry for drones, the training we offer currently gives them a certification level to operate. I won't say as commercial operators because there's actually no commercial rating. It is what's called an advanced level certificate that allows drones or RPAS to be operated in areas normally restricted for those who are more recreational operators, for lack of a better explanation. It is the advanced training at the levels I was mentioning about dealing with some of the fields of photogrammetry, videography, and I'm not taking just regular recreational videography. That it's manipulation of the data, but also the techniques used to acquire the appropriate data in drone operations. There's a system that is coming into play called LiDAR. You've heard of radar, which stands for radio wave and detection ranging. LiDAR is light detection and ranging, similar system but light-based. Used massively for inspections of windmills, volumetric assessments, building structural bridge inspections. As an engineer, I could give you considerable examples, go on and on and on. The issue is the fact that training in these areas is expensive, and it currently exceeds what is available through the VAC envelope under short course program funding, which is a one-time maximum of $5,000. It was not always like that. In 2023, drone training was eligible under the formal program envelope. And for veterans like myself, I mean, that doesn't mean they're going to hand the money out to you indiscriminately, but you have access of up to, I believe, $80,000 if you are a former career member of the forces. That was changed suddenly and arbitrarily without explanation. Where going forward, the lines in, I don't know if you have a copy of the letter that I wrote, it said in there that from moving forward, all drone training will be funded only by short course funding. And as I mentioned, that $5,000 pot gets burned up very, very quickly. And, not everybody who even when they're trying to start a business, as was pointed out earlier, I mean, you look at the commercial side of things, bank supports. I'm a former entrepreneur with a business as well, and I know what the uphill battle is dealing with financial institutions to try and get funding when you've got a bona fide business plan.
Mr. Merrill, unfortunately, I have to interrupt you. I apologize sincerely. I'm sure we can come back to further. I apologize, sir. We will now have for 6 minutes, Mrs. Hurdle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to continue with Mr. Merrill, actually. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So you were talking about the $5,000 short course training fund, and then there was an $80,000. Where would your training fall within that range of funds?
You could conceivably, well, okay. When I first applied several years ago to get my advanced certification as a drone operator, okay, the training program itself was $5,000. I submitted an application under short course funding because that was the amount that they had available for it, and I had no idea it might qualify for formal course. Following submission of that, VAC contacted me and said, no, you should really put this under formal course funding. Part of their concern was that I would be out of pocket, but they said, once you use that short course funding, it's gone. You can't have access to it anymore. And fine, that was the way that initial certification for myself in 2022 took place. It was a year later when I was actually putting an application in for more advanced training, and that course work was in the neighborhood of $20K, that VAC sat on it for several months and then just came back with a decision saying, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And from there on in, it has been limited for any veteran who wants to apply to that short course envelope. But to add to your question, conceivably, and as this industry is currently expanding and these devices are becoming more complex, I mean, these are not toys that are being funded. These have many applications in and outside of the regular business world, as the world has seen. That training cost will tend to increase because of the training level the instructors have to acquire before they can take it on. And so it could, I don't think it would ever burn up the entire 80K envelope, but it could certainly use a good portion of it.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Let's talk a little bit about those training programs then, please. Can you describe what the training programs typically cover and then how they prepare participants for commercial opportunities?
Okay. Okay. The very first level of certification for drone operations is called basic, and that is something that someone who wants to get a drone to play with it more for fun, etc. There's a minimum age limit, I believe, of 14 for that, but you're very limited as to where you can actually operate them. The one area that must be negotiated if you are conducting a drone operation is if the area is either considered restricted, maybe due to a police operation, or if it's controlled airspace where you could have impact air operations. In order to function in those zones, you must have at least an advanced limit certification. And advanced limit certification allows you to function in controlled airspace. If the aircraft meets criteria, it can be over people. The Transport Canada has very, very strict guidelines on how these are to be operated. Excuse me. They're also limited to what's called visual line of sight, or the acronym is VLOS. With the increasing requirement to operate extended range with drones, recently they have introduced what's called their level 1 complex rating. And that permits you, under the given conditions, if they're all approved by Transport Canada, to run at what's known as beyond visual line of sight, where you are remotely operating a drone out beyond your line of sight, you know, at the point that they're so far away you can't see them, and you're relying entirely on the operating system and the machine's camera and its GPS data to let you know exactly where it is and what it is doing. Those last two, the advanced and the level 1, are the ones that are required for pretty much if you wish to operate as a commercial operator.
Wow, I feel like I got all that. It was amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
So, are those the certifications that that they will receive from your training?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Great.
No.
Yeah. So, have you observed strengths that veterans bring to the RPAS training and the broader drone industry? Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, actually, those strengths have been mentioned also by the two other witnesses here. The fact that, you know, members of the forces, you know, training is inherent throughout your career. Your ability to focus, self-discipline, you know, the teamwork aspect, all of those things combine into, you know, that motivation to get the job done, do it well. Assimilating vast amounts of information in very short periods of time, and being able not to just regurgitate it, but to apply it and rationalize with it. These skill sets themselves all append to what is, you know, what would end up in as being an effective operator. The technical aspect of it as well. Most of the individuals that do come into the drone training usually have some degree of technical training from the military.
Okay, I've got 30 seconds.
Okay.
Are there practical adjustments or alternatives that you believe could support both VAC schools and veterans seeking advanced training? Quickly.
Alternatives. Right now, drone schools are developing because these types of programs are not available through regular educational institutions such as community colleges, or if they are just beginning to start up. But it has been independent operations that have been focusing on the nitty-gritty of this industry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Merrill. And pour 6 minutes, Madame.
For 6 minutes, Ms. Gaudreau.
Francophone on this call. Madame Gaudreau will address you in French, so make sure that you have the right button on your system so you can hear properly. Pour 6 minutes, Madame Gaudreau.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je vais commencer à poser des questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start with questions to Dr. Roulotte. Well, you approach things in a very structured way, and you also had a lot of success with the company you sold. So the 4 elements you talked about this time in French, how could you define those briefly? And do you think some are more important than others? Well, when I was developing a national company, I would say the first skill that came into play was ambitious. It is a must have. This applies to everything I did in my military service, military college, in the reserves, but in the business world as well. So always trying to push the envelope and having ambition. Second is being able to absorb and manage stress and learn how to compartmentalize it to make sure that you can use it to propulse yourself into whatever's next. That will be two. And third, well, I was lucky in the sense that when I left the forces, I was doing an MBA program at the same time. So having the technical skills in accounting, finance, human resources, statistics, that also came in quite handy. And then being able to analyze problems in business, in the business world. And the last element I would say is luck. It's just good timing, being at the right spot at the right time. So before you became a member of the forces, I can see that you were already an ambitious person. So how about cultural shock for those who maybe were not planning from the get-go to become entrepreneurs? I mean, I come from the same business world. I am a co-owner of a business. We have franchises, but so not having that initial drive, could it be an obstacle? Well, people ask me the question, why did you go into the business world? And the answer is that I was desperate. I had nothing else to fall back on. Desperate in what sense? Well, if you'll allow me, ladies and gentlemen, when I left the forces, it was to go and work with a federal minister as their chief of staff. So I left for that purpose to work with Ms. Campbell, and then 6 months, after that decision, I realized that wasn't a calling for me, and it turned into a summer job, if you want. So I started in my basement. I started with 100 calls a day, and I had 2 suits. I was mixing and matching and wearing the same stuff day in, day out, and I was constantly making calls. We had the yellow pages for government back in the day, so I started making calls. And once I finished my phone calls, I was driving downtown and knocking on doors. So I did that for 2 years, and then I had $2 million in contracts in my first year. So I was ambitious and desperate. My last question: you clearly are not the only one to have some of these qualities, ambition, leadership, to serve in the forces, accepting significant responsibility, commanding. So it's somewhat similar in the world of politics. So my question is, how is it that for some people, some people cannot have access to capital, training, or other procurement processes, for instance, but we want to help them out, be with them at every step of the way. But why do you think that linkage doesn't happen so that we can offer all the dignity to veterans, all the dignity that they deserve? Why is it not happening? Well, when you look at the narrative in the last couple of years, people say that veterans are burned out, they have PTSD, they have mental health issues and other health problems. And we were talking about the United States. And if you compare what we have here in Canada, the national and political narrative is completely different. here, if you go online, and I have 10 seconds. If you go online, you look for veterans. It's all about the programs, and the narrative is that our veterans are broken, they are not in good health, and the narrative isn't that they have a great potential. I do agree, Dr. Brulotte. Thank you very much. I have to interrupt, unfortunately.
Second round of 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Mr. Viersen.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and to our witnesses. I think, Mr. Brulotte, I think we'll just carry right on there. That was precisely, I guess, where I was hoping to go as well. How do you have a recommendation on how to turn that around? Like the GI Bill in the United States, I think is something that has been effective. Are you suggesting perhaps something like that?
I think and I want to choose my words carefully, the narrative that we have in terms of our relationship with veterans in Canada has always been one of compassion and thankfulness. And that is proper, and that is the one of the elements that we should be pursuing. But what it has done as well is we've gone down, and it's easy to go down this road of compassion. And when we go down that road of compassion and we continue to go down that road of compassion, we tend to emphasize things that we want to be compassionate about. And that is helping veterans who are, broken, who are wounded, who have PTSD. And that is, of course, something that has to be done. However, what's happened as well is that it's overshadowed, and it's the narrative that's constantly pursued instead of saying, oh my God, look at this workforce of leaders who have tenacity and perseverance and ambition and who've served in very difficult circumstances. And if they can act under fire, well, guess what? They can probably take it when you're trying to do a sales call and need to get out there and grow some business. So we've gone away from that. We do not have that anywhere. Scrub the web, you won't find it. That's what we got to get back to, is that narrative. What we have to get into is that narrative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mr. Morrill, you talked about your the training for drone operators. I assume that the military has drone operators. Could you correct me on that, perhaps? And if that's the case, does that certification transfer across the military civilian line?
Not to my knowledge. Now, in all honesty, I'm not sure what we actually have for drones in the Canadian military right now. You do hear about drones being used for military operations currently over between the Ukraine and Russia. Any device, can be weaponized. In the case of the drones, I know for the United States, where the ones that they operate in Europe that can be controlled from the U.S. continent, those individuals undergo, it's an entirely different realm of training because you're talking about a very different realm of control systems for them. But there is no, as far as I know, there is no available certification in the military that would cross over to a Transport Canada drone operator's compliance level.
Okay. As far as I'm aware as well, like in the skilled trades, I'm a Red Seal auto mechanic. I can take that clear across the country. Every province will recognize it. But as I understand, that's not the case for the military. If you come out of the military, you were in one of the trades, you don't necessarily have a Red Seal trade certificate. Is that, do you know anything about that?
As an aerospace engineering officer, the technicians that would work for me would be airframe, aero engine technicians, instrument electrical technicians, safety systems. There was a time when those trades did not cross over to a level of civilian equivalence with what would be known as a civilian aircraft maintenance engineer, or an AME. And those are the individuals that work on small general aircraft right up to what Air Canada flies. I don't know the exact crossover, but I know in the better part of 20 years that I have been out of the military that they have established credibility for the training that has been received in the military, and either becomes equivalent to, or it condenses or shortens the amount of additional training required for someone to acquire their civilian certifications. But again, go ahead.
Yeah, I represent a large agricultural communities, and there's lots of excitement around drone technology in agriculture.
Yep.
the frustrations are around how long it takes the government to get organized in allowing this technology to be used. They bring this technology from other countries where it's being used and get shut down very quickly and saying they don't have this regulation in place, or that they can't do that, or the line of sight, or having multiple drones flying with one operator. All of these things are causing frustrations. Do you have any comments around that?
5 seconds.
Those things are okay. Those things are changing. Transport Canada has been updating the regulations almost on an annual basis, and they do have provisions for multiple drones and beyond line of sight now. So
Thank you very much, Mr. Merrill. I apologize
Yeah.
again.
no, that's no
For
problem.
5 minutes, Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of our witnesses for being here, and thank you for your service. I'd like to bring Mr. Coleman into the conversation. And when I say to you, Mr. Coleman, thank you for your service, that includes thank you for your service as a police officer and as a as an elected public servant. Oh my!
From
And
my
I just
screen.
gave him all those compliments.
He was there.
From the top, Madam Chair.
He disappeared 15 seconds ago, so we will reconnect. You're
Let's take a little break.
maybe could we just suspend for a minute just to see if we can reconnect? Thank you.
To continue. So we had a bit of technical difficulty. I will hand the floor to Ms. Gaudreau for 2.5 minutes, and then we'll come back to Mr. Casey for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So we want to draw the right lessons from this study. Hopefully we'll be able to target some stuff that we can correct. And you were talking about the stigma and how we can see things differently. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So when you realize the potential that's out there and put it to our use, to our advantage, well, I think there's a lot to be gained in terms of how proud we can feel with our heroes. And it's really something quite positive to see the other side of the coin, as it were. But if you have any comments and any bits of information for the people here in the room who are taking notes, one main action maybe that could be taken, what would it be? Of the 4, I would come back to a previous comment. It is adopting a positive narrative. When you do that, it's not only that you're doing good to the individuals and they feel more self-confident, but beyond that, people around us will see our potential. So when we go to a bank, for instance, for a line of credit, or if we are dealing with customers, we are not scary to them. We're not broken. We don't have mental health problems. We don't have a tendency of becoming violent, for instance, in a work environment. So these are important things. We need to do multiple things, but if we were to do one thing, it would be to adopt a very positive, much more positive narrative for our veterans. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
We'll invite Mr. Casey for 5 minutes to address Mr. Coleman, I do believe.
Mr. Coleman, welcome back. Thank you for your service, both military, police, and to the good people of British Columbia in elected life. Sir, I wanted to just come back to a few things that you said and afford you an opportunity to expand upon them. One of the things that you talked about was the value of the franchise model to somebody with a military background. And if I understood you correctly, every franchise model comes with a pretty comprehensive manual, and the military training is ideally suited for that sort of an environment. If you could just expand upon that a bit, are there examples of franchisors who are already doing this? Are there examples that you've seen in what you're doing now, where you've had an opportunity to kind of substantiate your treatise that this is a good match?
Well, first of all, we should understand that most new businesses fail at a higher percentage than franchise business do in Canada. And that's because the tried and true model of the marketing, the advertising campaign, the discipline about how the business is run is already written up for the person that's going into the business. And so what I do with new people, I say, we'll take a look at, let's say, an oil change business. And I'll say, okay, we'll look at a franchise agreement, and if you want to be on your own, this is the type of model you should seek out if you don't want to franchise. The franchising piece is basically, you know what you need to put up, you know what you get for service, you know that you have somebody with support in the marketing of the business, and if you're a person with discipline and can follow the rules in a franchise, like a member of the military who has the training about being disciplined on time, we're prepared to work hard, because any business is a lot of work, but a franchise opportunity is much more ideally suited for them for most people to enter in their first business. Now, having said that, it would be, I think, beneficial if the Canadian Franchising Association, who do have trade shows on franchising and what have you, we're in a relationship with the Canadian Armed Forces and said, look, we have all these different franchises. We know which ones are successful. It could be food service. It could be automotive service. It could be, if they franchise just about everything today in some way or another, and you can learn an awful lot from it. But actually, if you had that relationship, you could say to them, would you take the time to give us as the military at our bases a franchise show, to actually show our veterans that would be moving on what the opportunities are in business through a franchise? They're easier to finance. You can actually find attractive investors to it because they see the discipline as well, and it can work very, very well.
Thank you. You also mentioned the value of mentorship, and that's something that we've heard from several of our guests over the course of this study, including Dr. Brulotte today. I can tell you that in where I come from in Prince Edward Island, we have something through the Chamber of Commerce for new immigrants called a Connectors Program. Could you just talk a little bit about what a formalized mentorship program would look like for veterans? What would be the key elements of that?
Well, you have a remarkable resource out there from people that have served in the military who would be glad, I think, to actually mentor a new business entry simply because of the relation with the military. You have the same thing happen with other things like law enforcement and what have you as well. I think what it looks like is, you say, we all want to give back. Most of us want to give back to business or what have you. to give back, it means that you say, we start a mentorship program, and would you be prepared to mentor? I mean, I don't charge any fees for anybody I mentor. I just give them the time because I believe that they need to have the opportunity and somebody to talk to. And that mentorship can be the simplest little thing about where you can, access parts or whatever. How could I find the thing? You can make a few phone calls if you've been around the business world and get that answer for somebody that's seeking it out, that's a new business person. So I think it's really say, why don't we start a mentorship program? You could liken it, if you want, to examples, the big brothers, big sisters, where somebody's mentored a child and brought them along and give them some help in their life to get to be successful. It's no different. And I can tell you what, the people that I know, and I have a number of folks that I will send people to get advice, really do enjoy sitting down with a young, disciplined business person, for whether it be military or non-military, and sharing some of their successes or information to be able to help them be successful. And I think you could have a program for like that too.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coleman. This will be concluding our first round. I want to say thanks to all of our witnesses. Merci pour vos services. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service.
And before we start for the round two, I just would like to make a proposal that we can adopt our subcommittee. So I will just make sure I read it properly. J'aimerais demander si le comité est prêt à adopter.
I would like to ask if the committee is ready to adopt the second report of the Subcommittee on Program and Procedure. It was distributed to members earlier today. Does the committee wish to adopt this report?
Parfait.
Perfect. We're now going to briefly adjourn to welcome our second panel. Once again, I would like to thank all of our witnesses for the first panel.
like to make a few comments for the benefits of our new witnesses. I will say first, welcome. It's a plaisir de vous avoir ici.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
The aspect is please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. And for those in the room, to use interpretation, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel using the device in front of you. A reminder that all comments should be addressed to the chair, and I am the clock keeper, as I was mentioning, so please know that if I'm doing this, that means I may have to interrupt you, so kindly, I apologize in advance. I would like to welcome on behalf of our committee as an individual, Monsieur Kevin Leboeuf avec nous. Also as an individual, Grigory Potapenko, and I apologize, sir, for my very French way of saying your name. And from Veterans Artists Collective, Mr. Christopher Henneberry, Chief Warrant Officer, and thank you for your services. So we will be starting a round of 5 minutes with the opening remarks, and I will invite, j'aimerais demander à Monsieur Leboeuf pour...
I'd like to invite Mr. Leboeuf for 5 minutes, please.
Madame la Présidente et le comité, c'est un honneur d'être ici ce soir pour partager mon histoire aujourd'hui. I never thought
It's an honor for me to be here with you.
taking cover or getting blown up by an IED would ever lead to becoming an entrepreneur. As a soldier, we have to make quick decisions that are necessary for the survival of self and for our section. Those decision-making skills are not taught. They're lived. They're experienced. They are forged in moments where hesitation can cost lives. My name is Kevin Leboeuf, co-founder of Educated Beards, a 100% natural and organic grooming product company, and Nine Bark Media, a full-funnel marketing agency. In 2016, I was diagnosed with PTSD from my mission to 2008-2009 in Afghanistan, where I was out of the wire daily, searching for bombs and threats. When I was medically released from the Canadian Armed Forces, I lost all purpose. The Army was the only thing I knew, and suddenly, I no longer had it. I hadn't even finished high school. Self-doubt fear, and worry set in. Suicidal thoughts, ongoing therapy, body aches, trouble sleeping, anxiety. It's incredibly hard to find a new purpose, a new identity, a new start when everything you knew has been stripped away. When I got out, I decided to grow a beard for the first time in my life. Yeah, a freedom beard. But it was awful. It was itchy, it was dry, it was flaky. Many symptoms that men experience when they don't know how to take care of their beard. But before giving up, I bought products at the pharmacy and brought it home. And my partner in life and in business, Alicia Phillips, has a background in holistic science. She rejected the products immediately because they were full of toxic chemicals. So she started making products for me. Friends wanted some, and then friends of friends, and Educated Beards was born. Today, we supply multiple countries and hold the highest certification, one of the highest certifications in the world. What surprised me the most was that taking care of my physical appearance had a massive impact on my mental health. I became less suicidal. The whole thing clicked. I was learning self-care. I had a routine again. I had a mission again. That routine, that structure, that daily discipline, it gave me a purpose when I had none. It would have not been possible to start my business without Alicia. During my transition, being a veteran, we thought that being a veteran would be a great asset. Instead, we learned that it was not. We had to restructure our shareholders agreement so that Alicia became the majority shareholder because women in business had access to benefits, funding opportunities, training, networking, and expert support that were simply not available to veterans. Starting a business is hard for anyone, but it became very clear that starting a business as a veteran was an even steeper uphill battle. From outside looking in, everything appears great. I'm labeled as a successful entrepreneur. In 2023, I was named Veteran Entrepreneur of the Year by Princess Trust Canada. I had not participated in any of their programs, yet I became the spokesperson of sorts. They brought me to speak at charity events in New York City in front of global celebrities. Shortly after, Manulife investigated me. They asked for company financials, which showed a loss. I never took a salary. I've never taken a salary and have put everything into Educated Beards. My psychologist had clearly stated that a return to work is not advised due to the severity and the persistence of my symptoms. That was disregarded and my benefits were cut off. These are some of the reasons cited. I'm the co-owner of a company operating in thousands of locations across multiple countries, and I have been a keynote speaker, even earning a Best Speaker Award at a small Fredericton Toastmaster Club. The club met twice a month. It was part of my rebuilding my confidence. But because it was used against me, I have not gone back since. I was made feel the shame as being a disabled veteran means I should sit at home and do nothing. I feel used when it's convenient for national organization to showcase a broken veteran succeeding, it serves the narrative. But when the reality of PTSD, the therapy, the panic, the setbacks does not fit the narrative, it is ignored or punished. Veterans have access to $80,000 of retraining, which is a wonderful initiative. But for many of us, traditional school is not possible. Several veterans I know that took part of this program did not complete that program. Meanwhile, financial support is not available to veterans who want to build their businesses that pay taxes, create jobs, and restore purpose. This is my story. I know there are many more like me. I stand here today with the fear that even this testimony could be used against me. But if we do not speak honestly, nothing will change. My hope is that the committee will listen, truly listen, and help create a pathway for veterans to continue serving Canada in post-service capacity. We still want to serve. We just need a system that does not punish us or trying to rebuild our lives. I believe in veteran entrepreneurs. I believe in our resilience, our discipline, our capacity to contribute. But now the path is not encouraged, it's not supported, and that needs to change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leboeuf. Thank you for your service, sir. I will now invite Mr. Patapienka to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Gregory Potapenko. I am a Canadian Armed Forces veteran and a full-time entrepreneur. I've built several businesses, acquired one. I've also struggled to build them. Entrepreneurship is hard, and I won't pretend otherwise. In my own case, the biggest barriers often has been me, my decisions, my risk tolerance, my execution. But beyond individual accountability, there are structural factors that either accelerate or constrain outcomes. That's what I'd like to focus on today. So if you strip a business down to its fundamentals, there's really three things: capital, talent, and a revenue engine. Take one away, the business fails. So in my experience and conversations with other veteran founders in Canada, our veteran entrepreneurship ecosystem struggles precisely in those three areas, and capital is always the primary barrier. I bootstrapped my businesses off of credit cards and then used proceeds from one venture to acquire another, but my businesses were predominantly asset-light, internet-based, and I could not even consider pursuing opportunities that required significant upfront capital. Veterans are trained to operate under pressure, manage risk, lead teams, but our current underwriting systems don't necessarily value or reward those signals. If veterans are, as some evidence suggests, a high probability operator class, then capital should flow accordingly, not as a favor, but as a rational capital allocation. That leads to related opportunity. When we talk about entrepreneurship, we often think about startups, starting something from scratch from zero, which is risky. We're missing a massive macroeconomic opportunity. Canada's facing a silver tsunami, generational transfer of $2 trillion in small and mid-sized businesses. Their owners age out, and thousands of viable companies need successors. Same time, CAF members, thousands transition out each year, and we're not systematically connecting those two transitions. So ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, is buying and operating an existing business can be a lower risk transition pathway than starting from scratch. It also preserves jobs, maintains productive capacity, stabilizes communities. In the US, SBA and VA-backed loan programs are frequently used for small business acquisitions, including veterans. In Canada, there isn't a comparable veteran-focused acquisition pathway that I know of. However, BDC recently launched a special fund to facilitate ETA for women entrepreneurs. That's an excellent initiative. Similar instrument for veteran operators would recognize the same principle. Targeted capital can unlock capable operators. If we are serious about productivity and SME continuity, connecting and funding veteran operators with retiring business owners is a strategic lever. Once again, it's not a preferential treatment, it's matching capability with opportunity. Number two, talent. If we want veteran entrepreneurs to create jobs, we must reduce friction on their first hire. The jump from solo operator to employer is one of the most difficult transitions in business, but right now our system often punishes veterans for their initiative. I've spoken with multiple peers, including Kevin here, who were denied their benefits from EI or VAC because they decided to pursue a business instead of traditional employment. So we're effectively saying, we'll help you if you're an employee, but we'll penalize you if you're an employer. Measures could make a difference, such as payroll tax holiday for the first hires, wage subsidy for veteran-owned firms, simplified federal hiring credits for veteran-owned businesses. Again, these are not special deals. They're growth accelerators applied to a population with demonstrated leadership and operational experience. Several years ago, there was a program by RBC that subsidized hiring CAF veterans. I use it in my business, helps tremendously. Government already provides tax deductions and credits for apprentices, tradespersons, youth employment. Why not include veterans? Third pillar, revenue. Canada wants veteran entrepreneurs to succeed. Government procurement is your biggest lever. Government is one of the biggest spenders in the country, but right now, procurement is a black box. Difficult for small firms to navigate. I could never figure it out myself, and a lot of others couldn't either. Government procurement should be an economic development tool with mechanisms that recognize veteran-led firms where appropriate. Again, not as a favor, but as a strategic allocation. Finally, one major barrier that I experienced is the data and education gap. I attempted to launch a business coaching and mentoring for veterans, and I couldn't find any data on the state of Canadian veteran-owned businesses. You cannot manage what you do not measure. If we don't measure it, we cannot design policy, and we cannot track outcomes. We can't scale what works. Why did I want to start the coaching program in the first place? Because at transition, they don't teach you that it is even an option. It was not presented to me during my transition, and exposure to this should start before release, not at the door. If we measure properly, align capital intelligently, leverage procurement, and reduce early hiring friction, veteran entrepreneurship can move from a niche topic to a meaningful contributor to Canada's productivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patapianka. Really appreciate. Now for 5 minutes, Mr. Enerberry.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Chief Warrant Officer Christopher Henneberry. I have served in the Canadian Armed Forces for nearly 41 years, beginning as a reserve infantry soldier in 1985. I currently serve as the Chief of Employer Support for Western Canada and will conclude my service at the age of 60 in 2 years. I live in Vancouver with my wife, who's also a veteran, and I'm a member of the Métis Nation of Ontario. In addition to my military career, I have built a parallel life in business and the arts. I completed a master's in IT Business Administration in 2004 and have founded, owned, and sold 3 companies since 1991. For more than 20 years, I have balanced entrepreneurship with reserve service. In 2015, after selling my consulting firm, I joined SAP and currently serve as an account executive supporting some of the largest Fortune 50 organizations in North America. My civilian career has taken me into complex global boardrooms, but it was my military service that prepared me to succeed in these environments. Art has also been a central part of my life. I studied at Emily Carr, and in 2011 I went to Afghanistan as a Canadian war artist. Today, that body of work hangs in galleries and messes and museums across Canada. During the pandemic, I founded the Veterans Artists Collective, an initiative that focuses on 2 outcomes. First, we deliver immersive weekend workshops in disciplines such as plein air painting, metalsmithing, and ceramics for veterans, serving CAF members, and RCMP, and their spouses. Over 300 participants from across Canada have attended. Many live with operational stress injuries, depression, anxiety, or PTSD. Our goal is to create a positive pathway to mental health through structured, creative practice and community. Second, we provide platforms for veterans to exhibit and sell their work. Our inaugural national exhibition in November of 2024 coincided with the lead-up of the Invictus Games in Vancouver. This program exists solely through the generosity of True Patriot Love and the Royal Canadian Legion. Over the past decade, I have observed something that's pretty concerning. There remains limited flexibility and tolerance for veterans who wish to transition into non-traditional careers, particularly entrepreneurial ones. In 2014, I was introduced to a medically released soldier from 3rd Battalion PPCLI, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. Danny was severely injured in an IED attack. He wanted to become a tattoo artist. He had passion but no formal training and no pathway within the existing retraining programs to pursue that goal. We explored whether his education benefits could support foundational but his VAC caseworker refused to allocate. Despite setbacks and no formal training, he persisted. I contacted over 20 tattoo parlors in Vancouver who did not respond. 2 actually did, and one owner said that he would have coffee with Danny, and he was moved by his story. That coffee turned into a part-time cleaning job in the tattoo parlor, and Danny is now a successful, sought-after tattoo artist with his own business. My journey was different. My service gave me leadership training, resilience, discipline, qualities that translated directly into entrepreneurial success. I was fortunate to find mentors who helped me interpret my military skill set into business language, but not every veteran is as fortunate. For more complex injury, physical or psychological, there needs to be more individualized and bespoke the transformation pathway needs to be. Entrepreneurship is a legitimate and powerful transition option for many veterans, yet our systems often default to conventional employment pathways that are not constructed to accommodate non-traditional ambitions. If we truly believe in the lifelong service and meaningful reintegration, then we must create flexible, responsive frameworks that recognize veterans as potential job creators, not only job seekers. And that's my ask, is we need to create a more flexible program that allows our veterans to apply for those funds, that $80,000. Because especially when we look at veterans who are suffering from PTSD, most of the people in my program do, they cannot fit into those traditional models. So not only are we dangling the $80,000 in front of them, but we're telling them they can't have it. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. We will now open the floor. Mrs. Wagenthal for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the three of you for what you're bringing to the table today. Appreciate the service that is represented here as well on behalf of Canada. Mr. Leboeuf, I'm very curious. You're very open and honest about the dynamics of not being able to be the face of your business. You needed to transition over to have your wife have more of that role to be able to be recognized to a certain degree, correct? So we have heard from other witnesses very carefully stating that they're veterans, but the funding is more targeted to specific groups, as in women, Indigenous, and Black. No problem. But you said, what about the veterans? I heard, what about the veterans? What about the veterans? Veterans are unique, as you've mentioned, and have so much capability and promise. So is that part of the dynamic here that I'm hearing is please recognize us as veterans to enable us, but at the same time, give us the freedom we need to be able to make those choices that are being inhibited from you at this point in time. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. In terms of like the funding that's available, like the $80,000, let's say, I wouldn't say like give the $80,000 right away to the veteran. So it'd be like milestones that you'd have to reach. Okay, maybe $10,000 to start up, because like we own our manufacturing, so we do manufacturing, we do our production, our videos, and selling and everything. So we did more than just order products from somewhere and then resell them.
Okay.
So it was really hard within that, and it's kind of sad because when you're in the military, you're especially in my job, we were taught to think outside the box a lot of the times, and stressful situations and be comfortable in the uncomfortable is really a massive thing that is necessary to be a successful entrepreneur. You need to be able to absorb chaos and not spread it between your team. So I think that's a massive skill that the veterans really own. Yeah. And
we did hear as well concerns around the things that I think has been mentioned here quite eloquently as well, that the sense is with VAC, if you succeed, it's not only, well, in the back of the mind it must be you don't need your funds or your care any longer, and it's taken away. So what does that say to you as an individual who, I mean, no matter what else you do with the rest of your life, you were told you would be taken care of when you return home. And Canadians, supposedly, we hear, are compassionate and thankful. But this is something that I'm not sure is being handled properly.
Yeah, what's really interesting about that, actually, is I wouldn't be able to do a job like on a daily basis. And that's what's really good about being an entrepreneur is it's my set schedule. It's not 9 to 5. I do rely on my wife quite a lot to do the majority of the work on a daily basis. She is the CEO, and she does make last decisions on everything. So I don't have to explain myself for, like, I'm not coming up for a week. I'm not doing this. I do therapy, and it's very unflexible. I go to all these appointments on a general basis.
I appreciate hearing that, and it's important to this study. Mr. Popopenko? Did I come close?
Polpenko.
You mentioned a couple of times the need for the support and the funding, and you also said, not as a favor, not as a favor. And I think there is that sense within our veteran community, and I do hear this, that, you know, if you're capable to do this, well, then you shouldn't get special treatment. But everybody who's starting a business needs to be recognized for that potential. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Sure, Madam Chair. We've been institutionalized or trained to be self-reliant and not ask for handouts, things of that nature. In fact, I invited several veteran entrepreneurs to this hearing, and the response was, I built what I built without any help, and that's how it's supposed to be. Like, it's supposed to be hard. fine. That's their opinion. I have a different opinion, but so that's why I also read the minutes from previous hearings, and there was a phrase that caught my attention about: are you looking for extra recognition, or are you looking for help? So I think that's why the veterans are not asking for this as a favor.
To do that. Right. I have just a brief moment left, and Mr. Henneberry, I really appreciate what you bring to the table. And it was mentioned here that you can't manage what you cannot measure. I'm still getting used to the fact that I'm a politician myself, and it's been a decade, but you can't manage what you cannot measure, and I see a lot of inability to measure in these circumstances, which is, I think, part of our challenge here with Veterans Affairs and even this committee.
I think it's not so much managing what you measure, it's just the measurement tools we're using right now are cookie cutter, and they're not flexible. And to say to one veteran who served, for 8 years, who comes out of it whole and well, you can't use the same measurement tool for him who served in an active war zone and comes out with PTSD. It's not the same.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate. I was very polite. I apologize, sir. Monsieur d'Entremont pour 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
And for your testimony today. We are starting to hear some of the same things as the presenters are coming to us and underlining a number of different challenges. I mean, some of them are entrepreneurial in nature, and some of them are very much attached to being a veteran and how you're able to access different programs. Monsieur Leboeuf, if I can sort of talk, when you set up your business, how did your business sort of match up? I mean, I'm going to guess it didn't much at all, in what you were actually trained to do in the armed forces, and then how did the transition not set you up to be able to do the business that you did end up setting up? It's kind of a double negative on that one, right?
Madame Présidente.
Madam Chair.
I was a majority shareholder because it was kind of like, obviously my wife doesn't have a beard, so beard grooming products and shaving products didn't really matter to her. So I was going to be the face of the company, so I was a majority shareholder, and then every time we'd go ask for something, it was like, oh, you're a veteran, what schooling do you have, what do you have there? And it wasn't really, nothing applied the same on the opposite side, where when we did change the shareholder agreement again, which was like more lawyer fees and more, it was just paperwork, but then at that point it was like, oh, women in business, okay, yeah, please, come on in. So it was like, it was a lot easier for us to navigate that way and get a lot more help that way.
Were you able to access any VAC programming in that?
So post Manulife dropping me, I didn't know this, but Manulife was like supporting my disability benefits. And a few months after, Veterans Affairs actually picked up my case, but I did not know that this was going to happen. And then, so I continued, but I did not know for 2 or 3 months that this was going to happen. I was like, what do I do now? And but yeah, that was the only thing with Veterans Affairs Canada.
And the other thing, I mean, a good question for you too is it seems like people, of course, that had the opportunity to be, or opportunity, I guess the wrong word, to be in a forward operating situation, their stress level, they can take a lot of stress. Is that a good thing in business, or is that actually a bad thing? Because your stress level or capability of taking on that stress is probably higher than what most businesses would be able to do.
It really depends who you ask. If you ask me, I love that chaos. I love that energy. Like my psychologist is like, yeah, that's good because you're optimized for that level of stress. But if you ask my wife, she's like, no, it's better no stress, reduce the stress levels. So very much different opportunity, and it works for because I'll operate on stressful things and she'll operate on the daily stuff.
And I'm sure right now with the grooming requirements of the Canadian Armed Forces, your products would be actually being used by current service members.
Yeah, we got really lucky actually when we launched the company. The CanForgin changed for beards being allowed in the military, and we supplied CanX right away. So all the CanXs across Canada picked up our brand. We were one of the first veteran-owned companies, and we've pushed that really hard, that CanX should be having a section that's veteran-owned companies to really promote those products. There's so many good talent in Canada for veterans that own companies that make fabulous products, and I stand behind all of them, that they should be in Canex and be supported that way.
Thank you, Mr. Puku, Kevin. Mr. Potapenko, I like the suggestion you made when the silver tsunami that's coming. You made me have to spell tsunami on my piece of paper here to remember how to spell that with a T and an S. How do we match that up? Like, you come out of the Canadian Armed Forces, as a pilot, that doesn't, and you might not have the training to be the plumber that we need, or the mechanic that we need, or the Red SEAL, whatever that we need in our communities. How would we try to match up some of those business opportunities that are actually in many communities across Canada?
Madam Chair, so I would suggest looking south of the border. They have taken steps in that regard with SBA-backed loans for up to $5 million USD to acquire small businesses, 90% LTV, actually. And they, at a federal level, basically facilitating transfer from one generation to another by making lending accessible. Also, the VA loan specifically is being used by a lot of veterans there for launching real estate businesses. So that's two methods that I know of in terms of making it financially accessible. And also, it's not done by the government, but there are organizations in the states that kind of put those transition veterans, like a pilot officer, as an operator in a business. So it could be like a CEO position, and they get a little bit of equity, they buy in, so they maybe don't buy the whole business. There's some investors behind them, but they're a capable operator. They can lead, they can build a team, and they're in charge of that business now. So,
and I did like your comment that entrepreneurship is hard. It's probably one of the harder opportunities. And 30 seconds. Oh my goodness, Mr. Hennebury. Just can you talk quickly about non-traditional jobs? I mean, when you get into the art realm, the business plan is not as normal as buying a electrician's business.
Yes, we have probably about, in our collective, we have about 600 members, and about 100 of them are professional artists that are very successful. Jody Miller was a major in the Air Force. She's a painter now. She was actually a rocket scientist. She has a PhD in aeronautics engineering, and now she's a full-time landscape painter. And her stuff at our show sold before we even put it up on the wall. She's very successful. And we have Roger Chabot, who many people know as well. These are all very successful people, but they're non-traditional. None of these people would qualify. And for a lot of people, it's not just, we live in a gig economy. We live in a gig economy, and not everybody's looking for that full-time job. They can only do part-time. And so a lot of these creative jobs are part of that non-traditional.
Thank you very much, sir. Pour 6 minutes, ça va être Madame.
For 6 minutes, Ms. Gaudreau.
French, so make sure that your earpiece, before we start, want to make sure that you can hear me in French. Madame Gaudreau, pour 6 minutes.
Ms. Gaudreau, for 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I don't know if you heard the latest, the statements from the witnesses in the first panel, but I think we're on to something. I think we are really on to something. Well, I'm saying this because in the system, whether this be for a politician or a civil servant or a bank that is managing risk in terms of the capital they're dealing with, well, at the end of the day, when you don't know about something, when you're not interested in something, it might look bizarre to you or strange to you, but actually once you go beyond the appearances, you start seeing things for what they are. And in our studies, we have also witnessed the suffering that exists in this realm. So I would like this study to allow us to do a 180 in terms of maybe not that we're going to come up with a program or a method, but we can start with the basics. So demystify things, attach the appropriate value to things. And I can do a whole list. We can definitely pinpoint things that are not done correctly. And so we're trying to get to the point where we are understanding things for what they are and getting rid of labels. A veteran being injured, destroyed, their lives have ended, but things can change and have changed maybe. So I'll hand it to you with these thoughts.
Madame Présidente.
Madam Chair, having a label, yes, it was tough to swallow. We did not want these labels, and I'm going to fix my own issues with my therapist or the people around me. But initiatives such as these, being here, having other veterans come here, speak to you, these are the first steps. We really need to demystify and highlight things and really understand what's not going well in the background. Of course, mentally, this has been challenging for us. Having people think that I'm a fraud, for instance, people might think that, well, because I became a veteran for some reason or the other, and I had to step back inside of my own company, and we have videos on that too, but I have a bit more gusto, a bit more punch, if you will, compared to previously. That's great to have. It's good for us because we had our experiences, and this will help people who will come after us, veterans of the future. It will be very important for them. Mr. Leboeuf, Mr. Potapenko?
Qu'en pensez-vous?
What do you think about this?
So I think we need to definitely work on removing the stigma. I personally have not experienced that, luckily, but I have met many people who have. And yeah, removing the stigma would definitely help. In fact, again, I'm going to refer to south of the border. They elevate their veterans everywhere. Like, I don't want to say put us on a pedestal, but, you know, I think there's some lessons there in terms of economic recognition as well.
Et d'autant plus quand on parle.
And when we're talking about recruitment and the pride that goes with it, Mr. Henneberry, veteran and artist. Well, I also had a career in the arts a little bit, but all of your experiences, that can't be easy. So what do you think about the stigma aspect of things?
You know, at a young age when I was in the military, but I was also going to art school at the same time, there's a real dichotomy there. I think when we talk about labels are not useful. I think that, but I think at the end of the day, I speak for myself, but I also speak for the members of my collective. Nobody wants to be a burden on the state. There's not a single soldier out there, injured or otherwise, that says, I want to be paid to sit at home. Nobody. And I think that those labels do kind of interfere with that perception. And so in a lot of cases, I don't think we have to do grand things. There doesn't have to be massive changes to the environment and to the system that has been built. I just think that we need to start looking at this from a standpoint that entrepreneurship or being self-sufficient, whatever you want to call that small business that you have that maybe doesn't get up to 20K, but really augments you and makes you feel better, and yet you're still able to contribute and create net value for your community. I think if we could do that, and we can free up some of the training funds to be able to encompass that, leverage the existing programs, Prince's program, Helmets to Hard Hats, they all have mentorship programs. So I think if we could do that, I think that would be really meaningful. And I think it's going to hit in a sweet spot with veterans, the ones who are the most injured. Because for the ones who aren't and can get up in the morning and just hit it, that 80K is amazing. But it leaves out everybody else. And I think that's the piece we need to look at. There's a sweet spot there that we need to look at.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would say perfect timing, sir.
We'll now begin our second round, so it'll be 5 minutes for Mrs. Cronis.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of you. Je vous remercie pour votre service.
Thank you for your service.
It's been an honor to hear your testimony today, because you clearly care immensely about Canada, about your communities, and also about your colleagues, and it's really heartening to see that. You've also each commented on the way that government policies fall short around facilitating veteran entrepreneurship, and you've outlined steps that could be taken to fix that. But every one of the activities that you've described would require investment to create the kind of pathways that you're describing, even when it's done sort of not as a favor basis. So, I'd like to give each of you a chance to just talk and put your thoughts on the record about any concerns you might have about the $4.23 billion of cuts that are proposed to Veterans Affairs and spelled out in the 2025 budget. And we'd also really love to hear I'd really love to hear from you on the ideas that you have on how Canada can do better to facilitate the kind of programs that you're talking about.
I'll take this. Madam Chair. Thank you. That's a really good question. Obviously, I have a finance degree, so I weaved it into my presentation. It's a capital allocation decision. So we don't have that statistic in Canada because we, again, don't measure it. But I believe I've saw statistics that in the U.S., veteran-owned businesses have a lower failure rate than non-veteran-owned. Another statistic I saw in Israel has abnormally, disproportionately high a degree of successful startups compared to the rest of the world because of their mandatory military service. So on those two data points, it's basically a less risky financial capital allocation decision by investing into veterans. So that's one suggestion. Another one is, for the lack of better terms, like sometimes you just need to get out of our way. To give you an example, when I was trying to jumpstart this coaching program, I had a call with Veteran Affairs Canada, and they said, "We like what you do. We cannot help you promote your stuff. Like, we cannot endorse you." If only they could, like, help these grassroots initiatives that are popping up, like Christopher is doing, and Kevin, and Princess Trust, and Treble Victor, and I can name a lot more. Like, help us help ourselves. That doesn't require investment necessarily. Those are my 2 points.
I mean, it's still going to require Veterans Affairs to do more with less, and when they change programs and create programs, even if it doesn't require them to fund you anymore, it will still cost the department money that they're not actually going to have, which is, I think, where some of my concerns come from. And I'd really love to hear. I'd love to hear what your perspectives are, Mr. Leboeuf or Mr. Henneberry.
Madam Chair. You know, I've been working in business my entire life, and some of the biggest companies, my current customers are Amazon, Google, and T-Mobile. At the end of the day, you know, there's finance decisions being made. I get that. But I don't necessarily agree that these funds these funds are allocated as part of your yearly budget, right? And I get that there's going to be pullbacks. A lot of those are coming from probably capital projects, I imagine. Right. So my kind of point on that is whenever we get into a situation, and I see this with companies that I work with all the time, when they have to look at their budget and look at it aggressively, then you need to be a lot smarter with your allocations, those things that are going to create the most value. I don't think what a lot of people are asking here is more funds. I think what people are asking for is a more attuned allotment of those funds, especially when we talk about retraining. I think that's what everybody has really said. I think that has been very consistent from at least 4 of the panelists that we've seen, is that there needs to be a better way that we allocate those funds, because it's not necessarily throwing people into university is not necessarily going to create the most value. I have 2 kids in university. I can tell you that 100%. I see lots of unemployed people with degrees. I think we need to be a lot more clever with those funds, and we need to be a lot more open to I don't know, be a little bit more, I know I'm in the creative industry, but be creative and get out of this little box that we put ourselves into.
Much. Mr. Clark for 5 minutes. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to be back. Thank you, all three of you, for being here today. Thank you very much for your service as well. Mr. LeBoeuf, I know in general it is inadvisable to comment on people's appearances, but tremendous beard. I assume you use your own products. I think that's a safe assumption. So, walking testimonial, which is great. And I just was doing a little research. There's 2 retailers in my riding, actually, in Nova Scotia that carry your products, so that's great. And I see there's many, many red dots across the map of the country, so congratulations on that. If I could, I'll ask this to you, Mr. LeBoeuf, and then if we could just move across to all three of you. If you could, and it may be difficult to do this, I know, because it's a big topic, but if you could distill down your experience as entrepreneurs post-military career, what looking back on it, or actively in it right now, what would be the one thing from a pragmatic, practical standpoint that you think would have made the most difference in what you're trying to do and made it much easier for you to get where you're at today and then hopefully scale up beyond that? I'll start with you, Mr. LeBoeuf.
Yeah, I think that the support from like supporting veterans would have been really, really helpful. From like not having to change the company over to the women-owned would have been great. But I think also there's no real incentives to really become an entrepreneur, because let's say you're on disability benefits, you're allowed to make $20,000 a year extra, and if you go over, then you're losing dollar for dollar, which, sure, I get it, I understand, but by that point you're like, why am I doing this? Am I going to create a job that's going to maybe take 20 years before I can make $100,000 a year to replace that full salary? So I already have a basement apartment in my house that I made that financial decision when I was young that brings me to $19,000. So it's like, well, I should probably not do anything else and just rot on my couch, basically. So there's not really an incentive there. And being an entrepreneur, we create so many jobs and we create so much tax money that goes back to the government, which then is much better than, let's say, some folks that went to school that spent $70,000 and never went back to the domain and never went back to work and just live on the couch now, just because they're not able to do what they've studied. So I think there's a much better financial approach as well to support the entrepreneur that's going to give back to the community, give back to the government and in taxes and employer taxes. And yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Potapenko.
I had a couple of minutes to think it over, and I think it would be my number 2 point in the address is the hiring incentives. At the time when I was hiring, it would be helpful to get that sort of subsidy or tax credit or whatever to help hire more people in Canada and scale the business.
Thank you. And Mr. Henneberry.
Madam Chair, when I owned my companies, I started them in my apartment as well. And I think probably the hardest thing for me to learn when I went through that process was the bootstrapping in starting a business. And any person who doesn't start out with a lot of capital, if any capital, really has to really get smart about their bootstrapping, how they create their business from nothing. And I think, that would be such an easy course. And I know Princess Trust they have kind of a support for that. But to see that formalized in a way would be awesome. Because there's a lot of things a lot of skills you can get from that process of understanding bootstrapping, how to get finance, how to do your marketing, how to create a product, understanding the very basics of a business and the value of a product and how to create intrinsically more value from that product. So I think those are really basic values. I think anybody taking that program would really benefit from, especially anybody who's trying to start a small business.
Do I have any time left, Madam Chair? Or 45 seconds? Okay. Mr. Potapenko, just on your point about hiring incentives, I assume based on your answer that nothing existed for you specifically related to your status as a
The
veteran?
RBC program was available at the time, but it was basically like a private institution offering it by the Royal Bank. It wasn't a government
Right.
initiative. So.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Mrs. Gaudreau, pour 2 minutes. Please put your earpiece. She will be addressing you in French. Elle va vous adresser en français. On comprend bien. Excellent.
She will be addressing you in French, so please put your earpieces in. Ms. Gaudreau, 2.5 minutes, please. 2.5 minutes, one question, but an answer from each of you, please. Were you encouraged or discouraged by Veterans Affairs Canada when you were launching your first entrepreneurial project? Encouraged, discouraged, or maybe nothing at all? Mr. Hannaberry, to start.
It didn't even play a factor in it. It had no factor. When I started my business, I was 20 years old. I'd only been in the military for about 3 years. I was going full-time to school. And even when I left school, I ran that company for 10 years. There was nothing in place. I'm probably one of the oldest ones here for sure. So I was in a time back when the military didn't have a lot of funds. And if anything, the military taught me how to bootstrap, because the military is very good at especially at the unit level, of trying to make the most from nothing.
Merci beaucoup.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, so similarly to Mr. Hanbury, I started while I was in, and good thing they didn't get in the way. But as I mentioned during my exit interview, many years later, there wasn't like an entrepreneurial stream. They're like, "What are you going to do? You want a job or something?" Like, "No, I have a business." Okay, that was it. It was nothing offered.
Probablement neutre, moi je dis.
Okay.
C'est pas encouragé, puis c'est pas.
Not encouraged, not much existed, so we did our own thing. So there was no specific department to accompany. It was more like, okay, so we're reviewing your case, seeing where you are, and what you'll do next. Okay, that's all. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Ms. Gaudreau.
Done that yet, but I would like to ask one of our witnesses. You talked about the RBC program, and I just maybe very briefly, do you know why it's non-existing anymore? Like, was there a particular reason?
Madam Chair, that sends me down memory lane. That was like 2018, 2019. Probably was a pilot or maybe temporary. I'm not sure. They did it for 2-3 years in conjunction with another non-profit organization. They were placing new immigrants, veterans, and some other like underprivileged people into work, and RBC was bankrolling that. So I don't know why they do it no more.
Thank you. Ça conclut notre ronde de
So this concludes our round of questions.
Of our meeting. I wanted to say on behalf of our committee, thank you very much. Thank you for your service. Thank you for taking part of this study. It's a very important study. We hope to see a good recommendation, and your comments were extremely valuable. So, merci beaucoup. Je vous souhaite une très belle soirée.
Thank you very much, and good evening.
We now adjourn, and we can say goodbye to our witnesses.
Thank you.